blind woman escaped the fire by following the creek, until a Lakota warrior helped her see again. The sun had been bright in the sky that morning, and the air smelled fresh, carrying the faint scent of pine from the nearby forest. Clara had always loved walking near the creek that ran behind her small cabin. She had been blind for several years, but she never let that stop her from exploring the world in her own way. She could feel the earth beneath her feet, hear the wind rustle through the trees, and listen to the gentle burble of the creek as it wound through the woods. To her, the sounds of nature were like a map, guiding her through life. That morning, however, there was something different in the air. The wind carried a strange, acrid smell that made Clara wrinkle her nose. It was faint at first, but it grew stronger with every step she took. Her heart began to beat a little faster, a small warning in her chest that something was wrong. She paused, straining her ears. There it was, a faint crackling, almost like tiny fireworks, popping in the distance. Clara's pulse quickened. Fires were dangerous, and she had heard too many stories of people losing their homes, their animals, and even their lives to them. She had no one with her that day, no one to help her if something went wrong. Clara took a deep breath and tried to calm herself, focusing on the sounds she knew and trusted. The soft gurgle of the creek, the rustle of leaves in the gentle wind, the distant call of a bird. But the crackling grew louder, sharper, and Clara realized that it wasn't just distant. The fire was moving toward her faster than she had expected. Smoke began to fill the air, making her cough and choke. Her eyes were useless in telling her what direction to go, but her ears, her hands, and her instincts became sharper. Clara took a step back toward the creek. Its sound was familiar and constant, and she knew that if she could follow it, she would find safety. She reached out with her hands to feel the shapes around her, carefully picking her way through the forest floor. Branches scratched her arms, and the ground was uneven, filled with hidden roots and small stones, but she kept going. Every step was careful, deliberate, and exhausting. Yet Clara refused to give in to fear. She reminded herself that panic would only make her stumble and that she had to trust the sounds around her. The smoke thickened, and Clara began to hear the roar of the fire itself. It was like a living thing, hungry and powerful, moving through the trees with a terrible determination. She could feel the heat on her skin, not yet enough to burn, but enough to make her aware that the danger was real and immediate. Every instinct screamed at her to run faster, but running blindly in a forest could be as dangerous as staying in one place. Clara forced herself to slow down, to listen, to breathe, and to step carefully. Her mind went back to the accident that had taken her sight. She remembered the hospital, the long nights of frustration, and the moments when she had felt lost in a world of darkness. But she also remembered the lessons she had learned, the way she had adapted, and the strength she had found in herself. She repeated those lessons silently, reminding herself that even in darkness she could find her path. And now, in the midst of smoke and fire, those lessons were more important than ever. The creek's sound grew louder, a welcome guide amid the chaos. Clara moved toward it, reaching out to feel the water's cool touch with her fingers. The water was shallow in places, rushing over smooth stones and twisting around fallen branches. Clara used the creek as her guide, stepping carefully from rock to rock, letting the water's movement guide her. She knew that as long as she could follow it, she could stay ahead of the fire. Hours seemed to pass as she moved. The forest around her was a confusing maze of smells, sounds, and textures. Fallen leaves hid holes in the ground, and she stumbled several times, scraping her knees and hands. Her arms were tired, her legs ached, and her lungs burned from the smoke, but Clara refused to stop. Every sense she had became sharper, more focused. She listened for the fire's roar, for the shifting of the wind, for the movement of animals fleeing the blaze. She felt the vibrations of the earth beneath her feet and used them to gauge her steps. At one point, Clara came to a steep incline, a small hill beside the creek. She paused, unsure how to climb it safely. The ground was loose, and one wrong step could send her tumbling down. She took a deep breath, reached out with her hands to find sturdy branches and roots, and slowly made her way up. Each movement required careful planning and attention, but she succeeded. At the top, she felt the creek again, a small relief in the chaos. As the day wore on, the fire smoke became heavier, Clara's clothing was damp with sweat, and her throat was sore from coughing. Yet she found small moments of beauty even in the danger, the distant call of a hawk, the gentle rhythm of the creek, and the cool touch of the water on her fingertips. These moments reminded her why she fought to survive, why she refused to give up. She was alone, but she was not powerless. Suddenly she heard a new sound, a soft, rhythmic snapping of branches, not from the fire, but from another presence. Her heart skipped a beat, unsure whether it was an animal or another person. Clara froze, listening. The sound came again, closer this time. She could sense it wasn't the fire, but something living, something moving carefully, like she was. Her mind raced, imagining all possibilities, but her fear was tempered by her determination to keep moving. She continued following the creek, now using it not only to guide her away from the fire, but also as a barrier, a safe line she could trust. Water, she realized, could be a friend as well as a guide. She felt along the bank, noting where it was shallow and where it dipped too deep. Every step was a mixture of fear and hope, exhaustion and focus. She imagined the fire behind her, devouring the forest, and felt a surge of gratitude that she had found the creek when she did. Without it, she might not have survived. As night approached, the fire's glow lit the sky in an eerie orange hue. Clara could feel the temperature drop slightly, and the coolness was a small comfort. She found a flat spot by the creek to rest, sitting down and letting her legs relax. Her body ached, and her mind replayed the day's events over and over. She realized how close she had come to danger, how every choice, every careful step had mattered. For a blind woman, the forest could be treacherous, but she had trusted herself, her instincts, and the creek, and that had saved her life. Even as she rested, Clara could hear the fire in the distance, the crackling and roaring of trees consumed, but she also heard the gentle water beside her, the steady heartbeat of the creek, and she knew that as long as she followed it, she had a path to safety. She closed her eyes not to see but to feel, to breathe, and to prepare for the journey ahead. The night was long, and Clara slept lightly, her ears tuned to every sound. She dreamed not of fear, but of freedom, of walking beside the creek without the smoke, without the fire, and of one day returning to the safety of her home. The forest was alive, dangerous and unpredictable, but it had taught her something crucial. Even in darkness, even when sight fails, a strong will and careful listening could guide one through the most terrifying situations. By the time the first light of dawn touched the forest, Clara was ready to move again. She stood by the creek, listening to its flow, feeling its cool splash on her fingertips, and she knew that today, like yesterday, she would survive. She was alone, but she was strong. She was blind, but she could still find her way. And most importantly, she understood that courage was not the absence of fear, but the determination to keep moving despite it. With renewed resolve, Clara continued her journey, following the creek through the forest, unaware that her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. The forest was quiet now, but Clara knew better than to trust the calm. The fire had retreated for the moment, but it had already left its mark. Trees were scorched, the air still carried a smoky tang, and the ground was littered with fallen branches. Every step she took was a careful negotiation with the uneven earth beneath her feet. She had survived the fire's immediate threat, but the wilderness itself was no less dangerous. Hunger, exhaustion, and uncertainty pressed against her like a heavy weight. Clara had always been independent, learning to navigate the world with her other senses. But being alone in the wilderness tested her limits in ways she had never imagined. She paused to rest beside the creek, letting her fingers glide along the cool water. The sound of the flowing stream was comforting, a reminder that even in chaos, some things remained constant. She drank small sips from the creek, careful to avoid swallowing too much water at once. Her body was tired, her muscles sore, but her mind remained alert. She needed food. Clara had always been careful to plan ahead, but the fire had destroyed any supplies she might have brought. The forest offered some possibilities: wild berries, edible roots, and small animals, but she had to be cautious. Some plants could be poisonous, and without sight the risk was higher. She remembered the lessons she had learned from books and the advice of friends before her blindness. Trust your instincts, use your other senses, and always stay patient. Carefully, she began feeling the plants along the creek, trying to distinguish the safe ones from the dangerous. She ate small bites of berries, careful to taste just a little first, feeling grateful for the forest's small gifts. As she moved, Clara's mind wandered back to her life before the accident. She remembered her small apartment, the books she loved, and the friends who had supported her when her world had first gone dark. She thought of the accident that had taken her sight, and though it still brought a sharp ache to her chest, she also felt pride. She had adapted, had learned to live fully in a world without sight, and now she was using all those skills to survive in the wilderness. The hours passed slowly, marked by the sound of the creek and the occasional rustle of leaves as animals moved nearby. Clara's legs ached, and her hands bore small cuts and scrapes from the rough terrain. But she pressed on. Every sound told her something about the world around her. The flutter of wings meant birds were near. The snapping of twigs warned her of movement behind her, and the distant roar of the fire reminded her of the danger she had escaped. She had learned to read the world through sound, smell, and touch, and now those skills were her lifeline. By midday, Clara began to notice changes in the forest. The air felt drier, the heat more intense, and the landscape had begun to open to a small valley. The creek widened slightly and the ground became more level, making her steps easier. She paused to rest again, letting her hands glide over the water's surface. The creek seemed to guide her, leading her away from the fire and towards safety. She whispered words of gratitude to the water, a small ritual she had begun on this journey. To Clara, the creek was more than water. It was a friend, a guide, and a protector. But solitude had its own challenges. Clara's mind sometimes played tricks on her. The rustling of leaves could sound like approaching danger, and shadows seemed to creep along the edges of her imagination. She had to remind herself to breathe, to stay calm, and to keep moving. Panic, she knew, would only make her stumble. Her steps became slower, more deliberate, but her resolve never wavered. She was alone, but she was strong. As the sun began to lower in the sky, Clara realized she would have to find a place to rest for the night. The forest could be treacherous in the dark, and she could not risk wandering blindly. She followed the creek to a small bend where the water flowed more quietly and the ground was flat and clear. Carefully she sat down, letting the cool earth support her tired body. She could hear the faint chirping of crickets beginning their nightly songs and the gentle rush of the creek. These sounds, though ordinary, felt like a lullaby, helping her calm her racing heart. Clara used this time to plan. She had survived the fire, but she still needed to find civilization. Her mind worked through the options. Follow the creek downstream, search for signs of other people, and continue to use her instincts to navigate the forest. She realized that her journey was not just about escaping danger. It was about reclaiming her independence, proving to herself that blindness did not mean helplessness. Night fell, and Clara prepared herself for sleep. She made a small area of comfort beside the creek, using leaves and fallen branches as a cushion. The air had cooled, bringing relief from the day's heat. Clara listened to the forest, noting every sound and movement. She knew that predators might be nearby, but the gentle flow of the creek and the familiarity of her surroundings gave her confidence. She let her body rest, but her senses remained alert. During the night, Clara dreamed of light and darkness blending together. She dreamed of walking along the creek with her eyes open, of seeing the sunlight dance on the water's surface, and of the forest alive with colors she could only imagine. These dreams brought both joy and longing, reminding her of what she had lost, but also of the strength she still possessed. She awoke several times during the night, listening for any sign of danger, and each time the steady sound of the creek reassured her. By morning, Clara felt renewed. Her body ached, but her spirit was stronger. She drank from the creek again and began to move, following its course. The forest seemed different in the light of day. She could hear birds singing in the trees, small animals rustling in the undergrowth, and the wind moving through the branches. Each sound gave her information, helping her navigate safely. She realized that the forest, though dangerous, was also full of life and beauty, and she felt grateful to be part of it. Hours later, Clara began to notice signs of other life. The sounds of human activity were faint at first, a distant shout, the sound of tools striking wood, and the occasional laughter of children. Her heart leapt with hope. Perhaps she would find someone who could help her, someone who could guide her safely out of the wilderness. But she also felt caution. She had learned to trust her instincts, and her instincts told her to approach carefully. Following the creek, Clara moved steadily toward the sounds. She used her hands to feel the terrain, noting every rock and root. She could smell smoke in the distance, not from the fire she had escaped, but from a small campfire. Relief and curiosity filled her at the same time. Perhaps she would finally meet another human being, someone who could help her continue her journey. Perhaps, as she approached, Clara's ears picked up another sound. Footsteps. They were steady and confident, moving through the forest with purpose. She froze, listening carefully. The footsteps stopped, and a voice called out gently, asking if someone was there. Clara's heart raced. She called back, her voice trembling but strong, explaining that she was blind and alone. The voice responded with calm reassurance, offering help. Clara felt a wave of relief wash over her. Soon a figure appeared beside the creek, a man with strong, steady movements and a presence that felt both powerful and kind. He introduced himself as Wakasa, a traveler and a warrior who was visiting the forest for spiritual reasons. Clara sensed immediately that he was trustworthy. His voice was calm, and he seemed to understand her situation without judgment. He offered her guidance, explaining that he could help her navigate the forest safely. Though cautious, Clara felt a flicker of hope. After days of fear, uncertainty, and solitude, she realized that she might not be completely alone after all. With Wakasa's guidance, she could find safety and perhaps even begin a journey towards something she had longed for: independence and clarity beyond her blindness. For now, though, Clara simply followed the creek, her senses alert, her heart cautious but hopeful, and her spirit determined. The fire had tested her courage, the wilderness had tested her endurance, and now, with another human presence, she felt a glimmer of trust returning. She had survived the fire, and she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Clara had never met anyone like Wakasa before. His voice was calm but strong, carrying a sense of patience that immediately put her at ease. When he spoke, she could tell he was not in a rush, not distracted, not impatient. Each word was chosen carefully, and it seemed as though he could see more than just the forest around them. He could see the fear and hope inside her. He guided her carefully along the creek, explaining the safest paths and the places where the ground was uneven. Clara followed his directions, trusting his voice to lead her. For the first time in days, she felt a small sense of relief, knowing that someone was with her, someone who understood the dangers of the wilderness. The sound of his footsteps beside her was steady and reassuring, a new rhythm in the chaotic symphony of the forest. Wakasa did not hurry her. He waited when she stumbled, giving her the time to regain balance. He explained the signs of the forest, how to sense the direction of the wind, how to hear changes in the water flow that indicated obstacles, and how to feel subtle vibrations in the ground that could warn of approaching animals. Clara listened carefully, absorbing every lesson. She realized that she had been surviving on instinct alone, but now, with guidance, she could learn to navigate the forest with confidence. As they moved, Wakasa spoke of his life. He told Clara that he was a Lakota warrior, traveling through the land to learn from the earth, the animals, and the spirits of the forest. He explained that his people believed in balance and respect for all living things, that every tree, every river, and every creature had a purpose and a story. Clara found herself fascinated by his words. Though she could not see, she could feel the weight of his respect for life, and it inspired her. Clara asked questions, eager to learn. Wakasa answered patiently, describing the world around her in ways she had never considered. He explained how to use the forest as a guide, how to read the land with more than just sight, and how to trust her instincts in harmony with what the world offered. Clara felt a deep sense of gratitude. She realized that she was not just being led to safety. She was being taught, learning skills that would stay with her long after the fire in the forest were behind her. Hours passed as they followed the creek together. Clara noticed that she was moving more confidently now. She could feel the changes in the ground beneath her feet, sense the water's flow, and anticipate obstacles before they became dangerous. Wakasa encouraged her gently, praising her efforts while also reminding her to be patient with herself. His presence was calming, like a steady hand in the storm she had survived. At one point, the creek widened into a small pool, and Clara paused to rest. Wakasa helped her find a flat spot to sit, and they listened to the water together. The sound of the flowing creek was soothing, and Clara felt a strange sense of peace. She realized that she had been afraid for so long, of the fire, of the wilderness, of being alone. But in this moment, with Wakasa beside her, some of that fear began to fade. Wakasa began to teach her simple ways to see the world without eyes. He showed her how to use her hands to feel textures and shapes, how to listen for subtle changes in the wind and water, and how to use her other senses to understand her surroundings. Clara practiced eagerly, realizing that she could learn to navigate the forest in a way she had never imagined. She could feel the trees bark, the smoothness of stones in the creek, and even the vibrations of small animals moving nearby. Each discovery gave her a small victory, a reminder of her own strength and adaptability. As the sun moved lower in the sky, Clara began to notice the changes in light and sound. The forest took on a different rhythm in the late afternoon, and Wakasa helped her adjust. He taught her how to sense the direction of the sun, how to feel warmth and shadows on her skin, and how to use the temperature of the air to guide her. Clara realized that even without sight she could see in a different way, with her mind, her hands, and her ears. It was as though a new world was opening to her, one that she had never experienced before. During their journey, Wakasa spoke of courage and patience. He explained that survival was not just about escaping danger, but about understanding the world and one's place in it. Clara listened carefully, feeling the truth of his words. She realized that her journey had been more than a test of her physical strength. It had been a test of her spirit. She had survived the fire, but now she was learning to survive in harmony with the forest, to trust herself, and to embrace her abilities rather than fear her limitations. That night they made camp by the creek. Wakasa showed her how to build a safe place to rest, using fallen branches and leaves to create a small shelter. Clara learned to identify safe spots, places where she could rest without fear of predators or falling debris. The fire had taught her caution, but Wakasa taught her awareness. Together they listened to the night sounds, the water flowing, the wind rustling leaves, and the distant calls of nocturnal animals. Clara felt a sense of belonging she had not experienced in days. Around the campfire, Wakasa shared stories of his people. He spoke of the Lakota's connection to nature, the importance of respect for all living things, and the wisdom passed down through generations. Clara was captivated even though she could not see the fire's glow. She could feel its warmth on her skin and hear it crackle, and in her imagination she painted the scenes Wakasa had described. The stories were not just entertaining, they were lessons, teaching her about balance, patience, and understanding the world in ways beyond sight. Clara realized how much she had been missing by relying only on her limited senses. She had survived because of instinct, but now she was learning to truly live with awareness and intention. Wakasa's guidance was gentle but firm, helping her understand that blindness did not mean helplessness. It meant adaptation, awareness, and the courage to explore the world differently. The following days were filled with practice and discovery. Wakasa guided Clara along the creek, showing her how to read the land, find food, and navigate obstacles. She learned to feel the temperature of the water, to sense its depth, to listen for subtle differences in sound to detect movement, and to trust her instincts while also using the lessons he taught. Each day she grew more confident. The forest was still dangerous, but she no longer feared it as she once had. It had become a teacher, and she was a willing student. One morning as they followed the creek, Wakasa suggested a small exercise. He asked Clara to close her eyes completely and walk a short distance on her own, using only her senses and the lessons she had learned. Clara hesitated, but then nodded. She trusted Wakasa. and she trusted herself. She took slow, careful steps, feeling the earth beneath her feet, listening to the water, and sensing the wind on her skin. Each step was a small triumph, a confirmation of her growing independence. When she reached the designated spot, Wakasa was waiting with a smile. Clara felt a surge of pride. For the first time in days, she realized that she could navigate the forest with skill and confidence. Her fear had not disappeared entirely, but it had been replaced by courage and determination. She was no longer just surviving, she was learning to thrive. Over time, Clara and Wakasa developed a bond based on trust, respect, and shared experience. She admired his patience and wisdom, and he admired her determination and resilience. Together they navigated the forest each day, learning more about the land, themselves, and the strength that comes from facing challenges with courage. Though Clara had escaped the fire and the immediate dangers of the wilderness, she understood that the journey ahead was about more than survival. It was about growth, understanding, and discovering the ways in which she could connect with the world around her. With Wakasa's guidance, she felt that she could accomplish this. She was learning not only to survive, but to embrace life fully, even without sight, and to discover new ways of seeing the beauty and wisdom that surrounded her. Clara had been traveling with Wakasa for several days now, and each day brought new lessons and discoveries. The forest, once a place of fear and danger, had become a living classroom. She had learned to feel the ground beneath her feet, to sense the movement of water, and to recognize the subtle differences in the sounds of the wind. Yet, even with all her learning, a part of her still longed for something she had almost forgotten: the ability to truly see the world around her. Wakasa noticed this longing. One morning as they rested beside the creek, he spoke softly. "Clara," he said, "your journey has been one of survival. You have learned to trust your senses, your instincts, and yourself. But there is another path, a path of healing. Are you ready to try?" Clara felt her heart race. She had hoped for this moment, but fear lingered. What if she failed? What if she had lost the ability to see forever? Wakasa placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Trust yourself," he said gently, "and trust the forest. It has guided you this far, and it will guide you further if you open your heart." Over the next several days, Wakasa introduced Clara to the spiritual and healing practices of his people. They began with meditation, sitting quietly beside the creek, focusing on the flow of the water and the rhythm of their breathing. Wakasa taught Clara to close her eyes, not to block the world, but to connect more deeply with it. To feel it, to hear it, to breathe it in. Clara felt a calmness settle over her that she had not known in years. He taught her about herbs and natural remedies, explaining how different plants could soothe the body and the mind. Clara learned to grind leaves into powders, to make simple pastes, and to use the aroma of plants to clear her mind. Each lesson was paired with a story, tales of courage, balance, and respect for all living things. Clara felt herself absorbing not just knowledge, but wisdom. She began to see the forest with new eyes, not with sight, but with understanding. One afternoon, Wakasa led Clara to a small clearing. The sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled light on the ground. "Sit here," he instructed. "Feel the sunlight on your skin, the wind on your face, and the earth beneath you. Open your mind to what is possible." Clara obeyed, sitting on the soft grass, her hands touching the earth. She felt warmth, energy, and a strange sense of anticipation. Something in the forest felt alive, as if it were waiting for her. Wakasa guided her through a series of exercises to awaken her senses. He asked her to imagine shapes and colors, to picture the movements of the trees and the creek, and to feel the energy of the world around her. At first, Clara struggled. She had been blind for so long that her mind had almost forgotten what vision could be. But Wakasa's patience never wavered. He encouraged her gently, reminding her that healing was a journey, not a race. Days passed, and Clara began to notice small changes. She felt more aware of light and shadow, even without seeing them. She sensed the movement of animals before they were near and could distinguish subtle differences in temperature and wind. Her confidence grew, and with it a new hope blossomed in her heart. She realized that the forest was teaching her not only to survive, but to live fully, to embrace life with courage and curiosity. One early morning, Wakasa suggested a more advanced practice. He asked Clara to follow the creek alone, trusting not just her senses but her inner vision. Clara hesitated, but she knew she was ready. She had learned so much, and she trusted Wakasa completely. She set off, listening to the water, feeling the earth, and sensing the subtle changes in the forest. Her steps were steady, confident, and guided by a combination of intuition and knowledge. As she walked, Clara felt a strange warmth in her chest. It was as if the forest itself was supporting her, guiding her along a path she could not yet see. The sounds of birds, the rustling of leaves, and the flow of the creek became a symphony, each note giving her direction. She closed her eyes, breathed deeply, and allowed herself to imagine the world she had not seen for so long. Colors, shapes, and movements began to appear in her mind. She was not seeing with her eyes, but she was seeing with her soul. When she returned to Wakasa, he smiled. "You are ready," he said simply. Clara's heart leapt. Ready for what? She wondered. Wakasa did not answer immediately. Instead, he asked her to sit beside the creek and focus on her breathing, on the rhythm of the water, and on the energy flowing through her body.
"Open your heart," he whispered.
"Let the forest speak to you." Clara closed her eyes and followed his instructions. At first, all she felt was the familiar sounds and textures of the forest. But then, something extraordinary happened. A warmth spread through her eyes, a tingling sensation that she had not felt since her sight was lost. Her mind filled with images, first blurry, then clearer, like a fog lifting. Shapes of trees, the sunlight on the water, the curves of the creek. All began to appear. She gasped, a sound of awe and disbelief escaping her lips. Wakasa remained silent, letting her experience the moment fully. Clara's heart raced as she realized she could see again, not completely, but enough to recognize the world around her. She reached out, touching the leaves and feeling their colors in her mind, connecting her senses in a way she had never imagined possible. The forest, the creek, and the sunlight all became vivid and alive, filling her with a joy she had thought was lost forever. Over the next days, Clara practiced these new abilities under Wakasa's guidance. She learned to combine her restored vision with her other senses, becoming more aware of her surroundings than ever before. She noticed details in the forest she had never imagined. The subtle colors of the moss on rocks, the patterns of sunlight through leaves, and the tiny movements of animals in the underbrush. Each discovery filled her with wonder and gratitude. Clara also began to understand something deeper. Wakasa had not just helped her see. He had helped her reconnect with herself, with her strength, and with the world around her. Sight was no longer just a physical ability. It was a symbol of her resilience, her courage, and her determination to embrace life fully. The fire that had once threatened to destroy her had instead led her to this moment of transformation. One morning, as they sat beside the creek, Clara turned to Wakasa. "I feel alive in a way I never thought possible," she said softly. Wakasa nodded, smiling. "You have done the work," he replied. "The forest guided you, but you have opened your heart. That is why you can see now." Clara realized that her journey had been more than escaping the fire or surviving the wilderness. It had been about growth, learning, and the discovery of a deeper vision, one that combined the mind, the heart, and the senses. She felt gratitude for every moment, every challenge, and every lesson that had led her here. As the days passed, Clara and Wakasa continued to explore the forest together. She walked with confidence now, able to navigate the terrain with her restored vision and heightened senses. They practiced more spiritual exercises, learning from each other and the forest. Clara felt a sense of balance she had never known, a harmony between her inner strength and the world around her. She also began to dream of the future. She knew that she would return to her home, to the life she had left behind, but she would return changed. She would carry with her the lessons of the forest, the teachings of Wakasa, and the experience of seeing again. She had survived fire, wilderness, and blindness, and now she had discovered the power to embrace life fully. In a final exercise, Wicasa asked Clara to stand by the creek, close her eyes, and let the sun warm her face. She did so, feeling the energy of the forest and the strength within her. Then, slowly, she opened her eyes. The sunlight danced on the water. The trees swayed gently, and every detail of the forest was vivid and alive. Clara smiled, tears of joy streaming down her face. She had regained her sight, but more importantly, she had regained herself. The forest had tested her courage, the fire had tested her survival, and Wicasa had guided her toward healing. Clara realized that every challenge had led her to this moment, a moment of clarity, vision, and profound gratitude. She was ready to face the world, not just with her eyes, but with her heart, her mind, and her spirit fully awakened. Clara felt the warmth of the morning sun in her face as she sat by the creek. The water sparkled, and the gentle sound of its flow reminded her of the long journey she had survived. For days, weeks even, she had lived with uncertainty, danger, and fear, yet now she felt a sense of peace that she had never known. The fire, the wilderness, and the long hours of struggle had led her to a place of strength and clarity. But more than that, they had led her to herself. With Wicasa by her side, she had learned lessons she would carry forever. He had taught her to trust her senses, to respect the world, and to connect with life in ways that went far beyond mere survival. Through his guidance, Clara had regained her sight, but she had also discovered a vision that was deeper than the physical. She saw the world not just with her eyes, but with her mind, her heart, and her spirit. Every tree, every ripple in the creek, every whisper of the wind held meaning. It was time to return to the world she had left behind. Clara felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had been alone in the forest for so long, dependent on her instincts and Wicasa's guidance, that the thought of returning to her community felt strange. She wondered how people would react to her story, and whether they would understand the transformation she had experienced. But Wicasa reassured her. "The forest has prepared you," he said. "The journey has changed you, and now you will bring that change to the world." Their path back was slow and careful. Clara relied on both her regained vision and the skills she had learned to navigate the forest safely. She noticed details she had missed before: the colors of the flowers, the way sunlight created patterns on the leaves, and the soft rustling of animals moving through the undergrowth. Each step felt like a celebration of life, a reminder that she had survived and that she was capable of thriving. As they neared the edge of the forest, Clara began to think about the people she would meet. Friends, neighbors, and strangers, all would see her in a new light. She wondered if they would be inspired by her journey, or if they would simply see a woman who had been blind and then regained her sight. But Clara realized that it did not matter what others thought. Her story was her own, and the lessons she had learned were a gift she could carry forever. Wicasa taught her one final lesson before they left the forest completely. "Remember," he said, "the world will test you. Challenges will come, and fear will return. But you have faced fire, darkness, and the wilderness. You have learned to trust yourself and to see with more than your eyes. Do not forget that strength." Clara nodded, feeling a deep gratitude. She had learned not only to survive, but to live fully and courageously. When they finally reached the edge of the forest, Clara could see her home in the distance. Her heart swelled with emotion. She had been away for so long, and the thought of returning filled her with joy and anticipation. Yet she also felt a sense of reverence for the journey she had completed. The fire, the forest, and Wicasa's teachings had changed her. She knew that she would never see the world in the same way again, and she was grateful for that. Clara returned to her community slowly, sharing her story with those who would listen. At first, people were amazed by her account of escaping the fire, surviving alone, and navigating the wilderness despite her blindness. But what inspired them most was not the danger she had faced, but the strength, courage, and determination she had shown. Clara spoke not only of the fire and the forest, but of the lessons she had learned from Wicasa and the Lakota teachings. She explained how the journey had taught her to see the world in new ways, to respect life, and to trust her own instincts. Her story became a source of inspiration. People admired her resilience and the grace with which she had faced adversity. They asked her questions, eager to learn how she had survived, how she had navigated the forest, and how she had regained her sight. Clara answered patiently, sharing her experiences and the lessons that had guided her. She emphasized that the journey had been about more than survival. It had been about growth, awareness, and embracing life fully, no matter the challenges. Clara also began to use her experience to help others. She visited schools, community centers, and local gatherings, speaking to people about courage, resilience, and the importance of trusting oneself. She shared techniques she had learned for navigating the world without sight, for listening to nature, and for finding inner strength. People were moved by her story, and many left her talks with a renewed sense of hope and determination. In the months that followed, Clara continued to explore the lessons of her journey. She returned to the creek where her ordeal had begun, walking along its banks and reflecting on how far she had come. She practiced the spiritual exercises Wakasa had taught her, meditating by the water and connecting with the forest in ways that nourished her mind and soul. Each visit reminded her of the strength she had discovered within herself and of the power of the human spirit to overcome challenges. Her bond with Wakasa remained strong. Though he eventually returned to his own people, their connection endured. Clara continued to practice the teachings he had shared, and she often thought of him with gratitude. He had guided her through a journey that had tested every part of her being, her body, her mind, and her heart, and he had helped her emerge stronger and wiser. Through her journey, Clara learned that true vision is more than seeing with the eyes. It is seeing with understanding, compassion, and awareness. It is trusting oneself and the world around you, even when circumstances seem impossible. She realized that life is full of challenges, but that courage, patience, and determination can turn even the most frightening experiences into opportunities for growth and discovery. Clara also learned the value of gratitude. She was grateful for the creek that had guided her through the fire, for the forest that had taught her awareness, and for Wakasa who had shared his wisdom and patience. She was grateful for her regained sight, but even more for the inner vision she had developed, the ability to perceive the world fully, with awareness, courage, and understanding. As time passed, Clara's story became more than just a tale of survival. It became a story of transformation, of a woman who faced unimaginable challenges and emerged stronger, wiser, and more connected to the world. She had turned fear into courage, darkness into insight, and danger into growth. Her journey inspired those around her, reminding them of the power of resilience, determination, and hope. Clara also began to embrace new opportunities in her life. She returned to her work, pursued new interests, and connected more deeply with her community. Her experiences had changed her perspective, giving her a renewed sense of purpose and a greater appreciation for every moment. She lived each day with awareness and intention, carrying the lessons of the forest and the creek within her heart. Even years later, Clara would return to the creek, sit by its flowing water, and reflect on her journey. She would remember the fire that had forced her to rely on her instincts, the wilderness that had tested her patience and strength, and Wakasa, whose guidance had helped her see again. Each visit was a reminder of her courage, her resilience, and the beauty of life itself. In the end, Clara's story was not just about survival or regained sight. It was about the human spirit, the power of connection, and the ability to transform challenges into opportunities for growth. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and darkness, and she had emerged with vision, wisdom, and hope. Her journey was a testament to the strength within each of us, waiting to be discovered when we face life's greatest trials with courage and an open heart. Clara had escaped the fire, survived the wilderness, and regained her sight. But she had gained so much more, a deeper understanding of herself, a connection to the world, and a story that inspired others to believe in the power of hope, resilience, and inner strength. Her life was forever changed, and she embraced it fully, walking into the future with confidence, gratitude, and an open heart.